Well, hi guys. Welcome to Rosenfield 10. I'm Joe, and today I'm going to be talking about a film that I finally watched after a year and a half. This is going to be my review on Godzilla Minus One from 2023. I'm not going to go into all the details breaking down the cast and the director and everything else. This film has existed for a year and a half, and it was all the rage a year and a half ago when it was out at theaters. I missed the boat on it. I'm a Godzilla fan, but I'm not a fanatic. I've seen my share of Godzilla films at the theater and watched a ton of them on TV growing up in the 70s and 80s. But I'm not a fanatic. However, I wish I could have seen this at the theater. Missed the boat on that. But a lot of you have seen it, and a lot of people I know in my own personal life haven't seen it. I'm trying to get everyone I know to watch it because I believe it's such a good film. It's the best film I've seen in the last 15 to 20 years. In my top 20 all-time favorites. I've seen the movie 5 times. I've watched a lot of reactions and reviews over the last month talking about this film as well. Over 120 videos in the last month, whether it be a reaction or review. And so there's a lot of broad strokes that were covered by everyone. This isn't going to be your basic recap of the film. This is just going to be some thoughts I had surrounding it. I had to get in on the conversation. I had to put in my 2 cents because I feel very strongly about the film being a really good film. That 9.5 out of 10 for me. I could do a whole video about things that are wrong with it and complain about certain things. And I guess if I would approach it in a negative way, then yeah, I could rank it a lot lower. But the consensus is that everybody loves it. And I enjoyed watching the reviews and the reactions because everyone seemed to enjoy it as much as I do. One of my favorite films ever. So I want to talk about it and talk about some of the things that everyone else was talking about and kind of how I feel about it. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that Hollywood might learn something from this movie. This movie comes out in the middle of Hollywood's monsterverse, Legendary Pictures. They have their own reboot of Godzilla in 2014, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters. You've also got Kong, Skull Island, then you've got Godzilla versus Kong, and then most recently Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. Ugh, okay. So, as much as those films are fun, uh, none of them to me are brilliant movies at all. I enjoyed all of them, but I was frustrated with all of them as well. Out of all of those films, I probably liked Kong Skull Island the most because they had a couple of characters in there that I was grooving with, and that's the issue with the rest of these movies. The New Empire was, to me, an all new low. I mean, it just felt like they were trying to sell merchandise. You give Godzilla a new color, you give King Kong a glove, and yeah, you're good to go for the next holiday season. That's what it felt like to me. So, as much as I enjoy those films, and I've got more critique about that, yeah, it doesn't compare at all to Godzilla Minus One. Of course, a Japanese film's gonna bring it back to its original roots, and that to me is a plus, having Godzilla as a monster. Yes, he's a metaphor. He's a metaphor for all kinds of things. This movie to me felt like a Steven Spielberg movie. It felt like an old Steven Spielberg movie. And so when people say Hollywood needs to learn their lesson, I don't know if they will or not. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion. Feel like it's like Hollywood produces all of these films for mass consumption. I think the story is just whatever. If they can come up with a story at all, as long as they have a special effects team having monsters fight. Well, the first Godzilla in 2014 from this legendary Pictures Monsterverse, you hardly see Godzilla at all. And none of the characters to me were compelling. Everyone loves Bryan Cranston. I couldn't get over his hair dye. I didn't like it. Somewhere in the movie, we advanced 17 years, and I thought, oh, that's why his hair was dyed that color. Now he's going to be a natural color. No, it was the same bad looking hair color. Whether it was dyed or not, it looked dyed to me, distracted me. And I'm a simpleton when it comes to some things. Bryan Cranston's a great actor, but couldn't get past that. And then his wife dies. We barely even knew anything about her or their relationship. So, and then after that, it's basically following Aaron Taylor Johnson around, and I couldn't be less impressed. Every time we see his wife, she's trying to, you know, be a nurse and work for the cause, but she's basically just running away from the next disaster into a building that more than likely would have got crashed by these monsters fighting anyway. And in the second one, King of the Monsters, they decided, yeah, they'll give us more monsters. They gave us too many monsters, and I couldn't enjoy those scenes either. There was a lot of wow factor, but there was no real gripping drama or terror involved. And the more we spent time with the characters, the more I liked them even less. So I don't even remember Godzilla versus Kong. I have to see it again. I've only watched it once. It's not available. They do this from time to time. They make you have to buy certain things. I'm not about to buy it to watch it again. It'll pop up eventually, and I'll get to see Godzilla versus Kong again. But the new Empire was a joke. And yeah, Hollywood's not going to take notes if they have a really good story, one that is as good as Godzilla minus one, they'll probably screw it up. They'll screw it up in some other way, some other cookie cutter production formula that they have that's based on something. You know, their MonsterVerse is one of the biggest money making franchises in movie history. You know, these movies have grossed $2.5 billion, something like that. 5 billion, 2.5 billion. Yeah, I think 2.5 billion. And you know they've spent on production and marketing, they've spent over a billion, probably a billion and a half. So yeah, they've made $1 billion over the last decade, but not very good quality films. And so I look at Hollywood as they're not really trying to produce movies that are going to be classics and long lasting and beloved by the majority of fans out there. To me, they're just producing a mass consumption thing. It's all based on product. It's like with Marvel and Star Wars and Disney, in general. It's like what they do with Marvel. They have this plan of all these movies that are going to be released in the next several years. And it doesn't matter how bad one of them is, they're going to produce the next one and it's coming no matter what. Do they have these scripts already written? Do they have a great movie already figured out for something they're planning 5 years, 6 years from now? It's highly unlikely. Somebody knows somebody and somebody gets a chance. And yeah, they're not asking the fans. The fans aren't getting what they want. Hollywood has Steven Spielberg. They Spielberg makes movies to this day. But does he make movies like he used to? No. Is that formula old and tired? Well, it might have been 40 years ago, but it seems like, in my opinion, that's why Godzilla minus one works so well as far as a structure, a formula. It reminds me of an old Steven Spielberg movie, something like Close Encounters or Jaws or even Jurassic Park, something that Spielberg doesn't even do anymore. Hollywood has the blueprint for that. They're not interested in making really good movies. They're interested in making continuing stories that they can sell more products for for every holiday season. So I don't think Hollywood's going to learn a thing. And even if they do, they won't apply it well. That's the first thing I wanted to address. Everyone says Hollywood take notice. They noticed. They noticed that they've made $2.5 billion with the MonsterVerse, regardless of how bad the films are, and they're going to continue to do it. As long as they have a group of special effects artists putting together these monster clashes, yeah, the story of them seems irrelevant and will probably remain irrelevant. It's just the way Hollywood operates, in my opinion. Godzilla in Godzilla minus one goes back to the roots, the original metaphor, which is a metaphor for nuclear war or nuclear energy, nuclear power. He's also been a metaphor for pollution. And in this particular movie, Godzilla minus one, he could be looked at as a metaphor for the struggle of post-war life or of PTSD or of survivor's guilt, any kind of post-war trauma. And to me, Godzilla has always been a metaphor for America. And you can watch this film, and Godzilla is the metaphor for all of that and more. It all depends on how you look at it. And the American films, to me, he's kind of like a metaphor for just fun action, a necessary evil, if you will, that has to be there. We have to coincide. He has to bring order, all this stuff. I don't get it. I really don't. I tried. Yeah. If Godzilla claims a territory, he'll step all over us ants, so that makes more sense to me. That's where this movie is, minus one to me. He's just a animal who has a territory, and he come out the ocean one day and saw a bunch of ants on his territory, and he's cleaning house. That's the way I look at it. It's a Japanese movie, so there's subtitles, and a lot of American audience don't want to put up with that. They don't want to have to read. The dialogue is written so well, it's worth reading. Everything's acted at a nice pace where you can read and still see everything beautifully. And I think after 5 minutes, you forget it's a foreign film, but you have to give it a chance first. So that was my experience about it. There were some reviews that thought, and these were the ones that I don't ever watch, I just heard about. Couple of people in particular who had issues with the movie. They thought it might have been anti-American because it's from a Japanese point of view. I mean, give me a break. If you're a Japanese film and in Japanese production and Japanese actors, and yeah, it's gonna be a pro-Japanese stance, but obviously it was anti-imperialist and from the stance of a society and a people who were trying to change. So, in my opinion, this doesn't glorify kamikaze at all. As a matter of fact, Independence Day glorifies kamikaze more than Godzilla minus one. The overarching story, feeling, you know, the the moral of the fable is that the people have to change to preserving life and embracing life instead of dying for a cause that you don't believe in. Yeah, our lead character has a choice. He's given a mission and he knows the war is over. It's not going to make a difference, and he chooses life. A lot of reviewers were considering him a coward because he had done this. And obviously it's because of as an American, our impression of what kamikaze pilots mean. We think it's ridiculous. Well, I think this movie's whole point was to say that is ridiculous and our lives should be valued more than that. It's obviously the moral to the fable. This is what the character goes through. He makes a choice during a mission to survive. He may have felt some shame in fleeing his mission, fleeing his duty, but he didn't make the wrong decision in wanting to live. And when he has his final mission in the movie and chooses to live, it's celebrated by everybody, including the audience. It's obviously the point of the movie. It's a complete opposite of glorifying a kamikaze. The whole film, everyone is trying to move away from that train of thought. So, another thing I noticed in the reviews is that Koichi, the main character, is considered a coward right out of the gates. Not only did he flee his duty, but then his first encounter with Godzilla on Odo Island, he refuses to shoot the gun. He's scared at the moment and doesn't do it. This is what brings, in my opinion, the PTSD, the survivor's guilt, and the shame on him, is this incident at Odo Island. The character mentioned several times he didn't see a lot of action in war, and being a kamikaze pilot and not going through with that mission. Yeah, this was probably the most war he saw. This incident with Godzilla at Odo Island's what's causing his stress. Now, he probably feels shame because he fled his duty. And of course, that shame is put upon him by the thoughts and actions of other people around him. We see the neighbor give him a hard time early on, but then after that, even she accepts him and, begins the healing process, and they all work together towards preserving life. The neighbor helps with the baby, raising Kiko. So, those things are washed over pretty quickly. Everybody else in the film, his crew on the boat, they don't give him a hard time about not fulfilling that duty as a kamikaze. And even on Odo Island, there's a mechanic that tells him he agrees with his decision, if that were his decision, to flee that mission because the war was over anyway. And who wants to die honorably for a cause? It's not gonna make a difference. So yeah, he felt shame about that and guilt, but that was put on him. And even though it was put on him by his neighbor, she came around pretty quick. I think most of the shame and guilt for him comes from his inability to act on Odo Island versus Godzilla. And that's left up in the air whether he shoots Godzilla at that moment, whether that even makes a difference. Maybe he does kill Godzilla. Maybe he injures Godzilla enough where none of the other mechanics get injured on the island. I think I think Godzilla would have probably torn that plane up and then maybe in his injured state crawled back into the sea. Whether he could regenerate or not, I don't know. But I think that's where the guilt comes from. He didn't act. And in my opinion, he shouldn't have acted because it's an idiot in the trench that shot Godzilla to begin with that caused all their deaths. If none of them would have shot, they could have survived that situation. Definitely not surviving it by shooting. So that was my opinion the whole time. You don't have to sympathize with kamikaze pilots to feel the pain this guy was going through. He's obviously suffering due to the incident on Odo Island with Godzilla. And just because the movie is pro-Japanese, because it's a Japanese production, doesn't mean it's anti-American. They bring up America a couple of times in just a matter-of-fact kind of way. And of course, that's the way America was, that position. If you can't sympathize with the Japanese people because we were at war with them at the time, then you're not going to enjoy the movie. But I enjoyed it. Every nation, it's normal to embrace your own culture and to have pride in your heritage. I mean, this is something that this movie touches on things that I think a lot of people can identify with, even though what happened to Japan was a singular event. You you have to be Japanese to understand exactly how that feels to have two nuclear bombs dropped on you. There's a lot of war-torn countries all over the world that have to deal with air raids, even fire bombings and stuff like that. There are some people out there that might be able to identify closely with exactly what happened there. But I think if you are a sufferer of a tragedy like that was put on you, that you have no control over stopping, a natural disaster for instance, then you can identify. It's not the same, it's apples and oranges, but you can identify with the struggle, whether you live in a place that's dealt with earthquakes or wildfires or tornadoes, or in my case, in Louisiana, hurricanes. I've lived through no less than 12 major hurricanes in my life, way more hurricanes, just 12 major. I've lived through Katrina, I've lived through Ida. And those things, they they put a brake on your life. You slam on the brakes, all of a sudden you have no power for weeks. You're wondering when you're going to get your next food because, supply chains are thin. And then there's damage to the house. It took us over a year to fix this house, and we had insurance and everything else. So if you go through any kind of tragedy, you can sympathize with what these people are going through in the movie. And even if you haven't suffered through a natural disaster or something that kind of major and tragic, well, we've all had tragedy in our lives. But everybody on this earth had to deal with the pandemic. And since you lived through the pandemic, you can understand an event that comes along that you have no control over that changes everything. So I just think it's an easy movie to identify with, whether you feel like it's pro-Japanese or not. You have empathy, you have sympathy, and I mean, I really enjoyed it. I haven't seen that many movies that focused on that, so uh, I haven't seen a lot of foreign movies. I'm an American. I see American movies. I watch foreign movies. I haven't seen a lot that have dealt with that. It's pretty powerful. I think that's another reason why it was so highly acclaimed by a lot of people. If they can get over this, we're not at war with them anymore. This happened in the 40s, okay? We're all supposed to get along. All the countries are supposed to get along. After that, you can start to embrace each other's culture. There's a lot of Americans who love Japanese culture. There's a lot of Americans that love French culture and Spanish culture. And down here in Louisiana, we have our mix, Canadian and French, and it's all mixed with Native American, and we love it. And it's our heritage, and we're proud of it, and we fight for it. But we would also like to get along with everybody so you can come over and visit and enjoy it yourself, the food and everything else. I mean, that's what it is. So yeah, it's a Japanese film. I'm fine with it. I loved it. I got a lot out of it. Another thing that people were talking about was the budget, $15 million. How can this movie look so good and America spends 200 million and it doesn't come out looking nearly as good? I mean, everything on the screen in these MonsterVerse movies is completely fake. There's like almost no realism trying. They're not trying to give us realism at all. The whole entire scape landscape that we're looking at is completely fake. There's no blend of real and fake. There's no feeling of scale in Godzilla versus Kong. When Kong's running around Middle Earth, he just looks like he's running around a regular jungle. Everything's just really big. I don't know. It's one of them things. To me, -1 blended the real with the computer generated and was directed in a way that just made the entire visual effect look better. So you go from a bunch of people in a regular MonsterVerse Godzilla movie, you go to seeing a bunch of people to seeing a completely fake landscape. It's almost like we went from watching real people to watching an animation. And to me, there's no effort to blend the animation in with the real. So yeah, they didn't have a lot of money. A lot of people talk about the labor laws in Japan, workers' rights, stuff like that. I mean, in my opinion, if you have a chance to get a job in your country and you're doing something you love and it's producing special effects for a film, yeah, they might want you living there. You might be spending all of your hours until it's done there, and you might not feel like you got paid enough in the end. But I'm assuming to a lot of these people it was a labor of love because they created something so wonderful. And if that's not the case, it sucks. And I'm all about workers' rights, but I'm definitely not going to focus on that, make me not like the movie because of it, or be blinded by how $15 million can be so effective. Yeah, with all of this in mind, then sure. Takes a lot of people working a long time to get it to look that good. So yeah, maybe America can pay people more and have better rights and then I still feel like that money's not going to the right place because it doesn't look good in the end. It doesn't come out, doesn't translate as well to me. So if you did pay your workers the right way, then they still didn't come out with a very good product. Maybe they have too much time off. Maybe they're not given enough time to get it right because of this cookie cutter mass production crap that we have to put up with Hollywood all the time. They're not interested in making great movies. They're interested in selling a product. So, uh, I have no issues with the money at all. And yeah, here's to workers' rights around the world. Good luck, guys. American Godzilla is the anti-hero, of course. If Godzilla represents America, then the American movie's going to say he's a necessary evil. Oh yeah, he may blow up stuff all around the world, but we need him because there's going to be another evil out there, and we're going to need to defeat it. It's typical American junk. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the animation. I loved it. The scene in the boat that everyone talks about Jaws, reminds them of Jaws. Yes, it's beautiful. When people talk about the best scenes in the movie, a lot of them go straight to the last scene. They go to the Ginza scene, and somehow this one gets glossed over more often than not. This is the scene to me. When Godzilla shows up in his big form and chases that boat, and we have this battle with the mines until the bigger cruiser shows up and Godzilla takes it out. That entire scene was just so well done. One of my favorite scenes in movie history. That is a hell of a scene. That is the way you engage a viewer. You know, you first see Godzilla at Odo Island. It's a nighttime scene. We are so used to that in the MonsterVerse. Every scene in the MonsterVerse that shows a monster is nighttime and it's either snowing or raining. It's hilarious. I think it was King of the Monsters where I knew we were about to get a battle and then the rain started. Well, of course, everywhere the one character went, it was raining because it was like a hurricane, tropical storm following him. Oh, here comes the rain. We're about to get some special effects. Wow. Now, the opening Godzilla scene in -1 is the only one at night. Everything else is in beautiful broad daylight for all of the kinks to be seen. And a lot of people had an issue with the design. You know, uh that Godzilla Saurus in Odo Island. Hold on one sec. All right. That Godzilla Saurus on Odo Island, he had a lot of agility. He was crouching over, walking, leaning forward, standing up, coming down, moving pretty quickly. It showed to me that the effects team could present this monster this way, no problem. They did it and did it beautifully. It felt like Jurassic Park. And when we see Godzilla later, after the nuke has mutated him to a larger size, when I first watched it and he was walking around Ginza, I thought, man, he's so stiff. I see the resemblance in the older Godzilla films. Suitmation, I guess. Looks like a guy in a suit. He's taking these big lumbering steps. He's barely moving. And once he decides to spin his tail around and stuff, there's a lot more fluid movement. And so, why did they make him so stiff? Well, then I think about, well, after being blasted by nuclear radiation, not being used to being this size, suffering from radiation sickness. So I think that was where the stiffness came in. So after I watched it a couple of times, I looked at it that way. No, he was moving just fine before. This guy's been hit with a nuclear blast. He's pretty pissed at the things that did it to him. So he crawls out of the ocean. He can barely move, but he can step on your stuff. That's for sure. I just loved it. I love the special effects. I thought that the whole time I was watching it, it's like, oh, Godzilla movies are usually a guy in a suit. The beauty of these older Godzilla movies was seeing these sets that were so immaculately produced and then having a guy walk all over it. You know, it was people always say we just want to see Godzilla step on buildings and blow things up. And it was like, yeah, but to me, the beauty of the whole model, the scale, to build a whole city this intricately with buildings and telephone poles and light poles and trains and everything else, and then Godzilla comes in and just destroys it. Yeah, it was the beauty of that, you know, that look. I loved -1 for that, that look was still there. A lot of the cars, the train, a lot of it, the tanks, a lot of it looked like models. And they could have created it with CGI to look any way they wanted, but they stayed true to the older film and yeah, down to Godzilla walking stiff the way he was. I'm fine with it. I thought it was great. So yeah, I wanted to touch on all of that. You know, after a month of thinking about this movie, watching it 5 times and seeing all of these reactions and reviews, I just wanted to get my 2 cents in there, say everything I wanted to say about that. I thought the acting was brilliant. I thought the use of the music was wonderful. The use of the older tracks as well as the new stuff. It all worked so well. The photography was great. The direction was wonderful. Of course, the writing was wonderful. I think the visual effects work so well because you're taking in mind the direction and you're trying to make these things work in a real world looking situation. That's what makes it better than the MonsterVerse to me. Anytime you see Godzilla in a MonsterVerse, he's in a completely CG generated background. He's not really interacting with anything real. Uh, I know there were scenes in Godzilla versus Kong where they're smashing into buildings. Everything's at nighttime. All the buildings are lit up a certain way. It kind of gives everything a fluorescent kind of look. Oh, it's so wonderful. AI could have created it for you. And I don't know. There's just no real drama. There's no real tension. Godzilla X Kong. Kong comes up, he's sitting there, and then the dentist goes and fixes his tooth. There's no fear that Godzilla's going to wake up and kill this dude. No, this dude, we're supposed to believe, has a job where he's doing dental work for monarch monsters. Anyway, I doubt if there'll be, you know, a sequel to this movie in the sense that we're following the same characters. I would hate to put any more tragedy on them. I feel like when -1 ends, there is a family unit here that can finally be happy. Of course, you've got the thing on her neck, which implies a lot of things, but let the family live happily ever after, okay? The G cell kept her alive, and perhaps they'll be a wonderful family unit the rest of their lives. Maybe we'll jump 20 years into the future and we'll get to see Akiko do something to defend the country, but if they do keep the same characters, it'll be fine with me because I love all of them, and I'd love to see from them again, learn more from them. Um, but I think a sequel to -1's just going to be exactly what Godzilla mutates into this time around, and perhaps we'll follow another family, another main character, and if it's written as well as this one was, it'll be worth the watch. Maybe the movie will be called -2. Maybe Godzilla will be -1 and then another creature, another kaiju could be number 2, make it -2. Maybe Nordico becomes A monster. Whatever they want to give me, they can give me. I think this is wonderful. It stands alone on its own as my favorite Godzilla movie ever, one of the best ever. And they don't have to do a sequel, but I think there's one in the works. That's my review of Godzilla Minus One. I absolutely loved it. I wanted to talk about it, and I'm glad I had a chance to. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. I do reviews of movies and TV shows every now and then. I also cover the professional football team, the New Orleans Saints. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Bye.